Guy is unhinged. He got that contract, and no one can control him. Drew Brees can't control him. Sean Payton can't control him. The guy who owns him in our league is one of the best fantasy managers I've ever seen, player to player, and he can't get this guy in his lineup.
James Reiner. I am Joey Marino, and today we are going to be talking about the top 5 mid-season busts. Oh, the letdown is real, Zach.
Heartbreakers.
You hate to see. I was like, top 5 busts. Oh,
yeah, it's been pretty ugly for these guys, and we're gonna talk about them, talk bad about them.
We're going to bust them.
That's right. But before we get into it, if you haven't already subscribed, be sure and subscribe down below and drop a like. We could really use those subscriptions. They're the lifeblood of grown-up fantasy football. And leave a comment below on who is your biggest bust of 2020 for the midseason. So without further ado, boys, you want to get into some busts?
Do it. Start off with number 5. We have Michael Thomas, wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints. Everyone's first fantasy wide receiver taken off the board this year. Had to be drafted in the first round to get him. He's only played in one game, and that one game, he got you 3.2 fantasy points. Now, some of these games are due to that hamstring, and then some of these games are just due to personal issues. The guy is unhinged. He got that contract, and no one can control him. Drew Brees can't control him. Sean Payton can't control him. The guy who owns him in our league is one of the best fantasy managers I've ever seen, player to player, and he can't get this guy in his lineup.
Oh, man.
What's y'all do? None of y'all own Michael Thomas in any leagues, do you?
Nah, I think he's been dealing with the hamstring's just a recent injury. I think the ankle's actually what's kept him out so long, and now coming back, it's hamstring. So it's just like one after the other. But you're right, James. He's a great player, but I'm scared at this point now. You've waited literally midseason. Like, it is midseason until playoffs for fantasy, and you've gotten 3 points from him for drafting him in the first round. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, I don't know. I don't know if you can, like, sell high on him or what. There is a lot of drama coming out of there, too. Sean Payton's trying to talk some things down, so who knows? Maybe there aren't as many injuries, and it's more of the personal stuff. I don't know, but, yeah, he's a bust by all means. From what you spent on him to what you're getting, which is a big fat 0 every single week from him, yeah. You're just clogging up a bench spot right now.
Really. And with the hamstring, that's just added time now on that, where he's sitting on your bench. But I think the only thing I'll add is he should change his Twitter handle from Can't Guard Mike to Can't Tame Mike.
Mike unhinged.
Do y'all see this situation getting any better? Do you see the second half of the season him actually producing and being a valuable fantasy player?
So I'm actually scared about that. I know with these ankle issues, you don't come back just like watching like some fantasy doctor type stuff and, some videos on like injuries and things like that. It's hard to come back 100% after a high ankle sprain. So not on top of that, to also have a hamstring injury, which could have also, who knows, it could have been because of the ankle issue that he tweaked his hamstring because he's not as conditioned or because he's having to run a little bit, awkwardly. So to come back from both of those, I don't know. I think he's still good, and I think he still will do well whenever he does come back, but I don't think he returns first round, wide receiver value when he comes back. I think he's a a wide receiver 1 some weeks, most weeks a wide receiver 2 probably.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. He has the potential to go off, but these injuries are just they're keeping him. Yeah, they're holding him back from being the real Michael Thomas. So
Right.
yeah.
Gosh, what a sad life. Joey, am I going number 4? Are we?
Yes.
Did we do the old switcheroo? All right. So number
you are.
4. Good. Number 4, we have T.Y. Hilton. And this seems more like a T.Y. Days In because no one likes Days In instead of the Hilton. All right. Hilton has not cracked double-digit fantasy points in one game this entire season in half PPR formats. He hasn't gotten you 10 points at all, once. In most leagues where you drafted him, like, I think a lot of people drafted him fairly mid-round still. There was a lot of talk saying, okay, hey, Phillip Rivers needed a new team. He needed a good offensive line with the Colts to be able to establish a little better of a pass. Maybe he can get some chemistry going with Hilton, and we have not seen that at all. Tyler Lockett against the Cardinals scored more fantasy points in one game than T.Y. Hilton has all season long. That is ridiculous. And on top of that, we've talked about this in previous videos, his snap share is going down to Zach Pascal, to other receivers on the team. He's not in the mix at all. He's averaging hardly any targets. And we've talked about game script too. The game script's been favorable to the run. It's leaning more pass heavy now with the schedule coming up. You know, they're going against teams that they probably won't be able to run that often against, or they will get out to an early lead against the Colts. But we saw against the Bengals, they had a favorable game script to to pass the ball, and Hilton still had one catch on 5 targets for like 10 yards. So we can't trust him. What do y'all think? He's a bust.
You go ahead, James.
Yeah, the weird thing is he's getting a ton of targets and not being productive with them. So that tells me it's a talent issue. I think he's lost a step. He can't either get open, get as much separation as he used to. He is kind of getting up. He's getting older now. So this might be just the decline of T.Y. Hilton. He's been great for years, but I think this is the year that he's done. This is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bring up the targets and the efficiency. Listen to this. He's had 5 targets or more in every game but one, and he's caught 3 targets, or he's caught 4 passes in week 1, 3 in week 2, 3 in week 5, 3 in week 4, 6 in week 5, but on 10 targets, and then caught 1 of 5 last game against the Bengals.
Wow.
It's an efficiency thing. Yeah, I don't think it's really Phillip Rivers. I think I think you could be right, James. This may be the decline of T.Y. Hilton.
Luckily, with this bust, it's a little bit different than Michael Thomas, because Michael Thomas, you have to hold on your team. T.Y. Hilton, at least people are able to just drop him freely at this point, you know. So
He is not owned in ours.
Right, I'd rather have T.Y. Hilton so I could just drop him and free up a bench spot.
Mm-hmm. But I think that's going to do it for Leonard. Who? That's right. Our number
Leonard
3.
Trournette. Why don't you give us number 3, Joey?
Yeah, well, I think I kind of gave it away. Number 3 is Mr. Leonard Fournette, running back for the Bucks. And a lot of this kind of goes to, it's kind of halfway between injury and kind of efficiency, too. So Leonard Fournette goes down with, I can't remember what the injury was. I think it was an ankle injury, for a couple weeks. And we see the emergence of Ronald Jones. It's the second, I think. Either way, Rojo emerges.
Why does that matter?
It's important. It's important for him.
It's not the first, respect. That's for sure.
Correct. However, he produced pretty heavily from weeks 4 to 6, which are the weeks Leonard Fournette was out. But when Leonard Fournette was in week 1, he only put up 2.4 points against a pretty good Saints defense. And then he gets injured in week 3 against the Broncos, who are a very good defense. And now he's got some pretty favorable matchups coming up. He put up 12 points in this last game against the Raiders. And he did not have any touchdowns, but he had 7 targets in that game. I think the passing work is what's going to save Leonard Fournette from being a bust for the rest of the season. What do you guys think?
James,
I think
you take the floor.
this is kind of an unfair one a little bit because he has been dealing with an injury, but he did play. He's played in 3 weeks. Played 4 weeks now.
3 weeks healthy, but yes, 4 weeks.
Yes. 2 of those games were awful. One of them was great. One of them this past week was okay. You'd take it. I think you drafted him like the 4th, 5th round, I think, in most leagues, hoping you'd get that RB1 value. He hasn't returned that, and it looks like it's probably going to be, all his value is going to be split with Ronald Jones. So I don't know how much you can depend on him going forward.
Yeah. I like what you're saying, Joey, the targets he's getting, because I think everyone kind of knows that's not going to be Ronald Jones' forte. So I like that aspect. But what's concerning about being halfway through the season, you drafted him hopefully early, or not hopefully early, hopefully later. But you drafted him probably a little bit earlier thinking, okay, he's going to take over this backfield after some time. And I feel like just Arians is so untrustworthy with his running backs and with his players as a whole. He'll talk up one, he'll talk down one, and then do the reverse with actual like playing time. Leonard Fournette had a huge monster game like earlier this season, like had 25 fantasy points, I think. So everyone's like, yes, this is Leonard Fournette's time to shine. It's his backfield to lose now. Next game, he had like 3 points, I think. So it's something where you couldn't trust it. You put him in some weeks thinking he's going to do good. He does the opposite. And then the weeks that he does amazing, or like this week, he had a 12-point game, I think, in half PPR. You probably didn't even have him playing because he was coming off injury. You're thinking Ronald Jones has like cemented himself in this run game, and then Leonard Fournette actually has a decent amount of carries and some good targets. So it's like, okay, what do you do at this point with him?
Yeah, I think for where you drafted him, it's not worth the return because at best, it's going to be an RBBC because Ronald Jones isn't going anywhere.
And it's too risky too. Like I'm not sure where people drafted him and stuff, but like even you get into the 5th, 6th round, I still want a little bit of safety. Like I don't want to be like taking huge risks there, which I think is kind of where he went. So it's like he's a risk because any given week, Arians could just like Rojo better than him. Not even a talent thing, just he wants to play Rojo over him for some reason. So
yeah, he was 44th in half-point PPR, his ADP. So yeah.
It's a shame.
There's a ton of players on this Bucs offense too. I mean, this might be the most fancy owned team in the NFL.
You can tell they really just
and they just added Antonio Brown to the mix. So I mean, a lot of mouths to feed.
They want to get to the Super Bowl this year, and that's it. Like we will go all in this year, and that is it.
If they were a more run-heavy team like the Browns, I would say both Ronald Jones and Fournette could have value. But I think they're pass first, really.
Yeah. They got a sneaky run game, though. Rojo's been doing pretty good, so we'll see. Maybe, I don't know, maybe teams will get afraid of Brady getting back to his GOAT form, and then they'll actually key in on the run a little bit more.
All right, well, number 2, we have JUJU SMITH-SCHUSTER, everyone's favorite Steelers wide receiver that doesn't produce how he should. I think everyone drafted him expecting Big Ben's back. This is going to be Juju's year. Easy wide receiver 1, I think, is what people were expecting. You are not getting that. He has had, this past game was okay for a wide receiver, a 12-point game, but past 2 weeks, 1 point, 3 points. It's been rough for Juju. Big Ben spreading the ball around, so it's not all going to Juju. The run game's been good with James Conner and Snell back there. I think Juju's just going to be inconsistent for the rest of the year. I don't see a lot of... He's not going to give you any consistency.
Yeah. He's We've been waiting for the Juju emergence as a wide receiver 1 and to be the wide receiver 1 on this team, and I just do not think it's going to happen. we've waited, and unfortunately, he seems like a wide receiver 2 who has to have a wide receiver 1 in place. Chase Claypool might actually be the best thing to happen to Juju Smith-Schuster, because maybe defenses will say, oh, Juju's not the guy. Okay, we'll key in on Chase, and then Juju could maybe do well the rest of the season. But yeah, you drafted him as a wide receiver, hoping he'd be a wide receiver 1. I know probably Steelers fans are still hoping he'd be their wide receiver 1, but I don't think he's paying attention. I think he's twitching a little bit too much and playing some video games. So,
yeah, it was really good to see 14 targets though this past week against the Titans, who were a middling defense against there. But I think they shifted more towards Claypool, like you said. Chase Claypool may be kind of an asset now to Juju. Another thing is Deontay Johnson just can't stay healthy, so that means Juju is going. I mean, he's going to be on the field anyways, but that opens up more targets for him because Deontay Johnson had a pretty decent game while he was in there. So, yeah, but James, I think you're right. Consistency is probably not going to be there. As, what we thought was a wide receiver 1, he's looking more like a wide receiver 2 with 1 upside.
Yeah, he could have a couple blow-up weeks, but it's not going to be every week, and you're going to have him in your lineup every week to get those games.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I'd rather get rid of him and try and get some return while he's got a good game on him, because you're going to have a couple more of those 4-point games, and probably more often than not, and then have to just bite the bullet there because he's got to be in your lineup. So unless you've got a good bench player to put in his place, and you have the courage and the confidence to make that switch.
You got the stones to do it.
I know I don't.
No, sir.
All right, let's move on to our number 1 midseason bust. James, you might disagree a little bit on this one, but we are going with a Mr. Kenyan Drake. And this feels a little bad and a shot to Kenyan Drake, especially after him suffering what they're saying is probably like a high ankle sprain. I think he honestly might actually be a candidate for IR right now is what they're saying too, just knowing that he's probably going to miss like 3-4 weeks or so. But yeah, before the Cowboys game this year, where he had a pretty good game, he was not doing much. If we take out the Cowboys game, actually, he was averaging 8.8 fantasy points per game in 6 games. So that's taking out the Cowboys game where they actually have a terrible defense. Even if we kept that game in there, actually, though, and we just took out his 69-yard touchdown run that happened literally in the last seconds of the game where they probably shouldn't have even been running anyway, he would still just be averaging 9.8 points per game. Where you drafted him in the first round, maybe beginning of the second, that is not going to cut it for an RB1. You are wanting that RB1 value, and he is just not providing it. On top of that, he is being phased out of the passing game completely. He's averaging – this is a terrible stat. This cemented bust in my mind. He's averaging 1 reception per game. So he's on pace to have 16 receptions on the season.
Oh, man.
Literally last year, in his first 3 games with the Cardinals, he had 16 receptions within 3 games. And he's on pace to get 16 receptions on the year. And that was before, actually, the injury. So now with him missing time, he'll probably have about 7 receptions on the year. So I don't know. I feel like they're bringing in Chase Edmonds a little bit more. Cliff Kingsbury stated he likes Edmonds a lot. He thinks he could be a big factor in the offense, and he honestly even came out and said he could be a third down back on his own, but they're not going to do that. But yeah, I just feel like with Drake's high ankle sprain now, with the low amount of efficiency, and then even Kyler Murray vulturing touchdowns, he is not returning the value that you spent on him in the first round, possibly early second round, and I don't want him. So bust. Boo. What do y'all think?
Yeah, before I know, James, you're
I'll let
other
you
camp on this.
Go ahead and agree with me, Joey, and then James can have the rebuttal.
He's only averaging 3.8 yards per carry, too, which he was your first round pick, or he's your RB1 most likely, as where you drafted him. That's not a good yards per carry, and averaging only 8 to 9 points a game. Oh, man, that's really rough. And, yeah, with the emergence of Chase Edmonds and Kingsbury saying he wants to get Edmonds involved, he's a midseason bust, and he's probably maybe the biggest bust in fantasy football.
And going with what you're saying, Joey, his yards per carry, we can't blame it all on him. The Cardinals' offense their offensive line does look really bad. But I think because of that, he's having to revert to some of his old ways of, like, instead of going straight up the middle, bouncing out. You actually saw him say his mom called him and said, hey, what are you doing bouncing all this stuff out? You need to go straight up, north and south. Yeah. So I think because the line's so bad and he's getting hit in the backfield, like, right off the bat, he's having to bounce out, which is just even worse for him, though. So, yeah. James, let's hear your argument.
So I think bust is just a strong word. I think it's underperformed would be the proper word. He is the RB20 in half-point PPR. That's a running back 2 in 10-man leagues. That means you draft him in the first round, you won first-round value. He's giving you second-round value. Low-end second-round value. But you drafted him as an RB1, he's giving you RB2 numbers. So underperformed, I think, is the more accurate word. I mean, he had 13 points in the first week, 10, 8, 3, 12, 28, 4. They're not sexy numbers, but they're reliable. He's getting a lot of carries. I think he provides a safe floor. Rest of the season, I think it would have gotten better if he didn't get hurt. Y'all clearly disagree, but he's a starting running back for a good offense, and underperformed is the word I would use, not bust.
I mean, you saw, though, against Dallas, he had a monster day, and then this following week against the Seahawks, he hurt himself at the very end of the game. So leading up to that, he only had 6 points. So yeah. I don't think he would have. I think the Dallas game kind of gives us those rose-colored glasses of oh, this is what he could be, and it definitely is what he could be. Like, that's what we want to see from him. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I don't know if their O-line is as good or good enough to sustain that. And you would want it to be like, okay, well, if they're not good enough to sustain that, then he can run some routes, he can get some passing down work, he's good to go. And it just seems like they do that with Edmonds now. Edmonds is super efficient with his touches because they're actually, like, designing good plays to him. Like Drake, it's like, okay, let's just run him up the middle 18 times, and then we'll actually throw Edmonds in there and do, like, this nice, cool little wheel route that he's definitely going to be open on. So I don't know. It seems weird. Like, they try not to get Drake efficient touches.
You mentioned it a while back, Zach, that when Chase Edmonds comes in, it's kind of like they're designing routes for him to get the ball. And we're not seeing that with Drake. He's... I mean, I guess when you say consistency, I mean, he's getting 13, 10, 8, 3, then 12 and 28, and then 4. So I guess he's consistent around, 8 points, like you said.
The average was 9, you said, Zach?
Yeah, it's
8 or 9,
yeah.
That's not RB1 numbers, and I mean, there's better RB2s out there. Kareem Hunt is technically an RB2.
I wouldn't do this because I know touchdowns are super unpredictable, but if Kyler Murray was not a running QB, I would say I don't think Kenyan Drake is a bust, and I am completely safe with him rest of the season because there's probably a good, like, 10... Not 10, but like probably 5 extra touchdowns that could have gone to Kenyan Drake that went to Kyler Murray on the ground, like at the goal line. So Kenyan Drake probably would have a lot more points right now if Kyler Murray wasn't a good running QB and vultured those goal line carries.
Yeah, Kyler Murray has 7 rushing touchdowns on the season.
Yep.
He's had 1 in at least every game except Carolina.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Sam. Oh, but we wish Kenyan Drake a speedy recovery.
Of course, absolutely. We want him to feel better. But that is actually going to do it for today's episode. Our top 5 busts for the midseason from 5 to 1 go Michael Thomas, T.Y. Hilton, Leonard Fournette, JUJU SMITH-SCHUSTER, and Kenyan Drake. So, hey, leave a comment below on who you think is one of the midseason busts for 2020. Be sure to like and subscribe grow up, and get guff.